Eric Burgess here with Music Marketing TV, and today we're going to be taking a look at the envelope generator and exactly how it works inside of Phoscyon by D16. Let's go ahead and dive into it. So this is Phoscyon. This is the first video in a small series we're going to be doing, sort of like a masterclass of sorts. And today we're going to be focusing on the sound control panel. It's a one-page synth. It's one of those synths that if you get the general idea of what's going on under the hood, there are just a ton of options. And because this is a modeled 303, there's just a ton of really amazing setting combinations that just sound really good. So even though there appears to be less controls, it is pretty dang crazy what you can get out of this thing. And a lot of the magic has to do with this sound control panel and knowing how it works. The rest is knowing the distortion as far as getting cool sounds go. So let's just go ahead and go through this. So we've got up here our wave selection, so we can choose a square wave or a sawtooth. And up next we have tuning. Now, just a word of warning, there's no reset to default control. You can't hold control click or shift click or double click to reset a knob to its default value. The reason I bring this up is because if you move tuning, you're going to have to move tuning back to 0, which is, I'm guessing, is something you're probably going to want to do manually. And sometimes it can be kind of a challenge. So just a word of warning there. So I'm not going to touch the tuning knob. In this case, it's a knob you're not usually going to want to touch anyways. Up next, we have our slide knob. And what slide does is it just controls how long it takes for one note to slide to the next note. So if I turn off the internal sequencer and just play 2 notes, that's a slide time. We're about like 50%. We'll bring it down. A very fast slide and a very slow slide. And when we do this in the context of a sequence, let's go ahead and add a slide to something. Let's put a slide on the middle one here. So slide can impact how your pattern is going to behave. And if you're sequencing in the piano roll directly, which we'll get to in future videos, it depends. The slide will come into play when 2 notes overlap. So if one note goes over another note, that's going to trigger a slide in the synthesizer, and this knob is going to matter. In the context of patterns, you can check your steps down here by clicking on this top light, and then the slide will be activated or deactivated by this button over here. So that is the slide for you. Moving on over, we have our first sort of the bulk of the envelope controller. So this is the cutoff frequency. And the way this works is the cutoff frequency is going to be moved around and according to the attack and decay. So it's an AD envelope, an attack decay envelope. So we have how we turn our envelope on and off. So if I have a very low cutoff, this is a low pass filter, by the way. So that's the cutoff filter in general. But as we begin to add things like the filter, the envelope modulation, and the envelope attack, we're going to link them to the cutoff control. So what I mean by that is right now the cutoff's all the way down, right? But if I modulate this by the envelope, and so these 2 knobs, the envelope attack and envelope decay, are going to turn the sound on and off, just like a regular envelope would. But if I give them modulation control, we're going to have a very fast attack and a very fast decay, and it's going to move the cutoff. There's actually a really great signal flow diagram. We might dive into it because it is pretty informative. But as you can see, this is moving the cutoff. So if we move the cutoff up, this is still going to modulate it. Like so. Up next, we have 2 knobs that also can be a tad confusing at first. The first is a common control. We have resonance. And what resonance is it's just a boost in the cutoff frequency. So when the cutoff starts moving around, the resonance is going to start moving around, and this is going to cause a spike in amplitude. It sounds really cool. Now remember, we're moving this cutoff around, which is why the resonance sounds the way that it does. If we actually dial this back, because the resonance is following the cutoff, and this is moving the cutoff, and so all of these things are connected. Be aware of that. Now we have another control here, which is called sweep time. And this controls how fast the resonance can sweep. It's actually got its own independent sweeping ability in addition to moving with where the cutoff's at. So if I go ahead and let's just bring this all the way down, and we'll talk about link here in a second. So at a very fast sweep time. Now this is a more subtle effect, but if you listen over here, it's more of a wow sound. And when we come back over here, it's a much sharper, just a pluck kind of a attack. And this is going to change behaviors depending on how the cutoff is moving around. In some cases, this will make very little difference. In other cases, it will make a difference, kind of like the one I just showed you here, where you'll get more of a direct attack versus a wow sound. And the link knob in the middle, what it does is it links these two together so that the resonance controls the sweep time as well. So this now does nothing. It's completely, as you can see, no difference in sound. It's completely controlled by the resonance. So if you want to just simplify it and have it connected, typically I leave this off just because I enjoy the extra control. But there's an option for you if you want it. So we've already talked about envelope mod and the attack and decay. And so these are linked up to control just the general sound. But when you turn on envelope mod, they also influence the cutoff in addition to that. So we could have like a longer. Okay, so now there's two decays here, and this is something we need to talk about. So there's an envelope decay, and then there's an accent decay. So there's another stage to this envelope. The envelope goes through a special case if the envelope is deemed to be an accent note. And an accent note just means that note's louder than the others. So if it's an accent note, how much accent it gets. So the attack is still the same attack, but it gets louder. How much louder is determined by the envelope accent control over here. So if we come down here through the step sequencer, an accent is on if this middle button is pushed. So if I go through, the second two have no accent, the first one does. So to make this extra clear, I'm going to have a fast attack because I think it's just easier to tell. And I'm also going to have a fast decay on both decay options. So if the note is not, actually let's make this long. So if the note is not accented, it's going to be a longer decay. And if it is accented, it's going to take the accent decay instead, and it's going to be faster. A fast decay. Now, so we get this like really fast, like wow, and then these two smaller things. If I go ahead and dial back this to match, we'll get a more rhythmic effect because these two will also be as short. And then just to sort of show you, whoops, I didn't want to touch that. If we come through here and add accents to all of them. And then let's go ahead and just make them all C. What the hey? And this, in this case, since they're all accented, this will no longer have any effect on any of them. And this will be the only decay that matters. So just be aware that the decays are picked based on if they're accented or not. And if you're, again, writing in a piano roll, it's going to be dependent on this velocity. So right now I'm using the internal sequencer, but if I were to sequence it in by hand, I would have some that are high velocity and some that are low velocity. And if they're low velocity, they're not going to be an accented version. There's actually a control to set this where this level has to be for an accent to trigger. If you go into options and then to synthesis, it's going to be here on this current accent velocity level and default accent velocity level. It's useful too if you're playing in live and you want to sequence live. Let's say you've got both of these off and you've got a keyboard that's like really sensitive where you barely push it and it triggers a very high velocity. Then you can actually dial it in with those settings there. But typically I don't have to go touch those. You just adjust the velocities here. You're good to go. So that's the accent controls. Now there is a little bit more here. We notice we have another link knob here, and this time we have an accent volume and an envelope accent. So this envelope accent actually influences the filter, kind of similar to how the envelope mod does. And then we have an accent volume. And what the accent volume does is it's the actual volume boost, where this one will work through a filter. And so when they're separated like this, there's no link, we can control the filter independently of the actual volume. So let's say that let's come through here. Let's turn off the accent on the middle one. And let's just play this. And I'm going to just dial back the accent volume. So this note and this note will get softer, the other two, because they are accented, and I'm going to reduce them. Now, we also hear that they have this extra resonance because of the accent envelope being on. I can actually reduce that independently now. And so you can imagine just automating any of these knobs can have dramatic effects just based on how all these things interact with each other. If we have link on, it's going to kind of do what happens over here. It's going to turn off this knob, the accent volume, and the accent envelope will take care of this parameter as well. So again, that's typically something I like to leave off. And then finally we have step length. So step length only matters in certain situations. If you're sequencing it manually, it's not really going to matter. But if you're using a pattern like I am here, the step length is going to determine how long each of these steps are. Now, of course, if they're slid, then it's not going to really matter. So if we come in and get rid of the slide, it'll be a little more apparent. But if we have a slide, it's by definition got to go to the next note. So that's why in that case, in the middle case, it didn't do anything. All right, now that we've got a grip sort of on how the sound control panel works, let's go ahead and just dial in a cool sound, shall we? So these sounds, by the way, if you go into the preset browser, are listed under clean because they do not have the distortion effect on. So this is a clean sound. And what I think, let's go with, let's do square wave since we've been messing so much with sawtooth wave. Let's have a short slide time. I'm going to leave our pattern sort of as is. What the heck? It sounds kind of cool. And let's just bring our cutoff down even further. I love high resonance. Who doesn't? It's amazing. I'm going to keep our sweep short, our envelope mod up quite a ways. Attack, decay, and what the heck? We'll have this one be a bit longer. And we'll have our accent be, we'll leave these at max. That way they really have a difference. We'll maybe dial this one back. Sometimes when the sound is clean, these settings will be that you can drive them much higher. It won't be as big a difference. So I could actually leave this up. But when we start using distortion, these settings will be amplified a lot. And so you're going to want to dial these back as soon as you start driving it with some distortion. Maybe if you hit a sweep time right around there. So hopefully just moving those knobs, you suddenly realize what's changing, why it's changing, how it's changing. It's just a sort of a fascinating thing to try and picture in your head how all the different pieces are moving. And that is the sound control panel. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe, hit that bell icon for future videos, and have a blessed day.